I had always believed that first impressions could hint at something magical, but that evening, an inexplicable sensation made my heart race. At a family dinner where everyone gathered around the table, I found myself drawn to Sam, an old friend of my grandfather. He had always been a reserved and courteous presence at our family events, but tonight, there was something different in his gaze and in the soft, almost secretive tone of his voice. Seated at the table, I could hardly believe how warmly he addressed me. His words, spoken in a quiet murmur, felt as if they were gently enveloping me, like a soft, reassuring embrace. My pulse quickened unexpectedly, and for a moment, the dish in my hand seemed to grow heavier. Although he talked about ordinary things, there was an energy in his tone that hinted at something hidden, something that only he understood. "I noticed the way you looked at me this evening," Sam said, his voice tender yet imbued with a mysterious allure. Simple words, but they stirred emotions deep within me. In that instant, I couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was more than a mere coincidence. It was the start of something entirely new. After dinner, as most of the guests began to leave, I remained behind in the kitchen to help clean up. It was there that Sam drew near. His tall, assured figure immediately captured my attention, yet now his eyes radiated a gentle warmth that was both inviting and enigmatic. He spoke in a calm manner, and every word seemed chosen not only to converse but also to draw me into a secret dialogue that only we shared. I tried to maintain a composed exterior, though inside I was a whirlwind of nervous excitement. Every subtle gesture he made felt magnetic, drawing me closer as if our connection transcended the usual bounds of family acquaintanceship. His steady gaze seemed to search me, and I felt as though a part of my soul was opening up to something entirely new, even if it carried a hint of trepidation. "Sometimes, people don't realize what's really happening," he said, leaning in slightly. "I just listen to my heart, it never steers me wrong." Hearing those words, my heart pounded even faster, yet I also felt a cautious hesitation. On one hand, I was captivated by his calm, almost mystical outlook on life. On the other, I knew that getting too close to someone so intimately connected to my family could stir conflicting emotions, a blend of intrigue, uncertainty, and even a touch of anxiety. In that quiet kitchen, every sound, the clink of dishes, the soft hum of the refrigerator, seemed amplified, as if the room itself held its breath. I tried to focus on these small details, the gentle tapping of my own footsteps, the dappled light filtering through the window. In that suspended moment, time appeared to slow, and every passing second carried the weight of possibility. Sam suggested that we sit at a small table tucked into a corner of the kitchen. As we chatted about mundane topics, weather, upcoming family plans, memories of days gone by, I sensed a deeper current beneath our conversation. His words, though calm and measured, hinted at a richer meaning, as if he was inviting me to share a secret that lay just beneath the surface of everyday life. He reminisced about times when life seemed simpler and spoke of the inevitable changes that time brings. His anecdotes painted vivid pictures of old family gatherings, shared laughter, and quiet moments that now seemed like fragments of a long-forgotten tale. Yet, interwoven with his memories was a subtle undercurrent of melancholy and reflection, a quiet acknowledgement that time waits for no one. "Sometimes, our past feels like a story we tell ourselves just to remember who we once were," Sam remarked, his voice gentle and soothing. There was a reassuring quality in his tone, as if he wished to impart confidence that every person's story mattered, and that every memory was worth cherishing. I listened intently, striving to decipher the message hidden within his words. Perhaps he was trying to share a piece of his inner world with me, or maybe his reflections were simply the echoes of his own journey. Regardless, each of his gestures exuded respect and kindness, convincing me that he truly wanted to connect with me on a level that transcended ordinary conversation. Despite the inner turmoil between reason and emotion, I sensed that this evening was marking a turning point in my life. Whether it was merely an awakening to new emotions or the beginning of a larger, unforeseen chapter, every moment felt charged with significance. There were no dramatic gestures or overt declarations, only the quiet, steady progression of words and glances that, together, began to form a mosaic of something deeper. When the clock indicated that it was late, our conversation drew to a gentle close. Sam mentioned that he needed to attend to his own affairs, but before leaving, he met my eyes and softly said, "Sometimes fate reminds us that nothing happens by chance." Those words lingered long after he departed, a quiet promise that the night had given birth to new possibilities. I retreated to my room with my thoughts in a tangle, The impressions of the evening, a subtle blend of warmth, mystery, and the promise of something new, remained with me like a soft whisper in my heart. Although outwardly the night was calm, within me a storm of emotions raged quietly, hinting at a shift that I could neither fully understand nor ignore. The next morning, as I awoke, Sam's parting words reverberated softly in my mind. While the early hours were filled with the usual quiet routine, an underlying sense of anticipation and uncertainty clung to me like a second skin. I tried to start the day with determination, but thoughts of the previous evening lingered stubbornly in my consciousness. During breakfast, I noticed that Sam's gaze met mine with an unmistakable tenderness. His look, though measured and reserved, carried that same sense of mystery and gentle intensity. Our conversation was light and unhurried, yet every exchange of words and every shared glance seemed to delineate a subtle boundary between the familiar and the new, a line that beckoned for exploration. Though a faint veil of melancholy still hovered over the memory of that night, I realized that every moment spent with Sam was reshaping my understanding of myself. It was as if life was presenting me with a choice: remain in the safety of what was known, or step into the realm of the unexpected, even if it came with risks and uncertainties. As the day turned to evening, I felt the lingering impression of Sam's presence. The conversation we had in the quiet kitchen had planted seeds of possibility in my mind, seeds that promised growth over time. That night, as I lay in bed replaying the events in my head, I knew deep down that this encounter with Sam was only the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter that I would unfold gradually, with cautious steps and an open heart. In adapting this story for a broader audience on YouTube, explicit details have been softened to focus on the emotional and atmospheric elements. The intimacy is conveyed through subtle dialogue and reflective narrative, ensuring that while the tension remains palpable, it respects platform guidelines and viewer comfort. The encounter is framed as an evocative, introspective moment, one that hints at deeper emotions and an unfolding journey without crossing into overly explicit territory. This concludes the first part of our tale, where the line between the familiar and the unknown begins to blur. Every detail, the soft murmur of a whispered phrase, the lingering look in a quiet room, suggests that our lives are filled with unexpected moments. These moments, though they may start quietly, have the power to change everything in ways we never imagined. The following day unfolded with an air of quiet determination, yet the subtle traces of that previous night continued to echo within me. I tried to convince myself that everything was perfectly ordinary, a routine day marked by family chatter and the gentle hum of domestic life. But beneath that veneer of normality, a restless energy stirred, fueled by the unspoken challenge of the encounter with Sam. At breakfast, the atmosphere was light. Grandfather chatted about his morning walk and plans for the garden, while I quietly sipped my coffee, my thoughts drifting back to the kitchen conversation. Across the table, Sam's gaze met mine now and then, each look conveying a mix of tenderness and a challenge that stirred my heart. There was an unspoken invitation in his eyes, a dare to step beyond the limits I had set for myself. I couldn't help but notice the subtle details, the way his hand paused momentarily as he reached for the sugar, the fleeting warmth in his smile, and the calm confidence in his voice as he commented on trivial matters. Every gesture, however small, seemed loaded with significance, and I found myself battling the urge to ask questions I was not quite ready to voice. Later that afternoon, when Grandfather left for his errands, I thought the house might finally grant me some solitude. I retreated to the living room with a book in an attempt to distract myself from the tangled emotions swirling inside. But the quiet was short-lived. Sam had taken his place in the cozy armchair by the window, thumbing through a newspaper as if he belonged there all along. The sight of him, so effortlessly calm, stirred a mixture of admiration and uncertainty within me. "You seem a bit distant today," he remarked casually, not looking up from his paper. His tone was soft, laced with that familiar undercurrent of understanding. I clutched my book a little tighter and forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just lost in thought, I suppose." His chuckle was gentle, almost knowing, and it made me aware of every small sound in the room, the rustle of pages, the distant hum of traffic outside, the steady tick of a clock on the wall. In that moment, the silence between us was heavy with meaning, as if every pause in our conversation was an invitation to reveal more than words could say. I couldn't help but wonder if Sam's presence was intended to challenge my carefully built defenses. His subtle interjections, his calm yet insistent questions, they nudged me, almost imperceptibly, toward a realization that there was much more to this encounter than simple curiosity. As the day wore on, my thoughts kept returning to the conversation in the kitchen, to the way his words had hung in the air like a promise. I felt an increasing need to understand the deeper layers of our connection, the reasons behind his gentle insistence and the way he seemed to see right through me. It was as if he was urging me to explore the possibility that every encounter, no matter how unexpected, carries within it the potential for transformation. That evening, while the rest of the house settled into its nightly routine, I found myself alone in the quiet solitude of my room. The memories of the past days played over in my mind like a soft, persistent refrain. I picked up my journal, hoping to capture the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions that had become my constant companion. The act of writing, however, was interrupted by a soft knock on my door, a sound that reverberated with both anticipation and uncertainty. "Come in," I called softly. The door opened, and there he was. Sam stood there in the muted light, his expression serious yet gentle, as if he bore news of both hope and caution. He stepped inside without a word, and for a long moment, the silence stretched between us, the delicate, charged pause where every heartbeat echoed like a secret. "I wanted to see how you're holding up," he said, his voice low and sincere. I hesitated, feeling vulnerable yet compelled by the sincerity in his tone. "I'm managing," I replied. The simplicity of my words belied the turmoil inside, a quiet storm of conflicting emotions and unanswered questions. Sam moved closer, his presence filling the space between us with an almost palpable warmth. "You don't have to hide how you feel," he continued softly. "Sometimes it's okay to admit that you're a little overwhelmed by everything." His words were both comforting and challenging. I found myself caught between the desire to retreat into the safety of routine and the need to embrace something unknown, something that promised both risk and reward. His eyes, steady and kind, invited me to be honest, to share the thoughts I had kept locked away for too long. "You make it seem so easy," I murmured, the admission tasting both bitter and sweet. "To let go of all that caution and just feel." A quiet smile played at the corners of his mouth. "It's never easy," he replied, "but sometimes, taking that small step can change everything." His words resonated deeply within me, stirring memories of moments when fear had held me back and of times when a single act of courage had altered the course of my life. For a while, we sat together in a gentle, wordless conversation, each of us searching for the right words to express the intangible. The quiet was comforting, a shared space where vulnerability felt safe and natural. I could sense that, like me, Sam was navigating a labyrinth of emotions, uncertainty, longing, and the silent hope for something more. Eventually, I broke the silence. "What is it that you see in all of this?" I asked, my voice tentative. "In us?" Sam looked at me, his gaze steady and filled with unspoken meaning. "I see the possibility of rediscovering ourselves," he said slowly. "Life often offers us moments that defy our expectations, moments that remind us that we're more than just the sum of our daily routines. I see in you a strength and a kindness that deserve to be celebrated, and I wonder if, together, we might explore something that goes beyond what we've known before." His words left me momentarily speechless. The idea of exploring a connection that went beyond the familiar was both exhilarating and daunting. It was as if he had gently lifted a veil, revealing a path that promised both beauty and uncertainty. For a long while, we simply sat there, absorbing the weight of his confession. The air in the room was thick with possibility, each breath laden with the hope of what might be. The subtle tension between us was no longer an obstacle, but a bridge, one that beckoned me to step forward, even if I was not entirely sure where it would lead. As the night deepened, I found myself grappling with the realization that the choices we make in moments like these shape the trajectory of our lives. The unspoken challenge that Sam had presented was not one of demand, but of invitation, a call to embrace change and to accept that vulnerability, while fraught with risk, is the gateway to genuine connection. "I'm scared," I admitted quietly, the truth hanging in the air. "Scared of losing myself, of what might change." Sam's eyes softened, and he reached out to gently rest his hand on mine, a gesture that conveyed both reassurance and solidarity. "It's natural to be afraid," he said. "But sometimes, the greatest discoveries about ourselves come when we dare to face that fear." In that simple, tender moment, the world outside seemed to fade away. The room became a cocoon of shared understanding, where every quiet word and every gentle touch carried the promise of renewal. I realized then that the challenge before me wasn't about abandoning caution entirely, but about finding the courage to allow a new chapter to begin, even if its ending was uncertain. The conversation lingered into the early hours, each of us sharing fragments of our innermost thoughts. Though we carefully avoided overly explicit details, our dialogue was imbued with a sense of intimacy that respected the boundaries of what was appropriate for our shared space. It was a delicate balance, honest and raw, yet mindful of the larger audience that might one day hear our story on platforms like YouTube. By the time Sam finally took his leave, I felt both lighter and more burdened by the weight of possibility. His departure was marked by a gentle reminder: remember, every step forward is a step toward discovering who you truly are. With that, he stepped out into the night, leaving me with a lingering warmth and a quiet resolve to confront the unknown. As I sat alone, the soft glow of my bedside lamp casting comforting shadows around the room, I realized that the journey had only just begun. The unspoken challenge, the delicate interplay of fear and hope, was now an intrinsic part of me. I knew that the days ahead would be filled with introspection and decisions that might redefine everything I had ever known. And while uncertainty still gripped me, I also felt a newfound determination to explore the depths of this connection, one that promised to lead me toward both self-discovery and the possibility of a love that defied conventional boundaries. In this second part of our story, the stakes have been subtly raised. The conversation with Sam has opened a door to introspection, challenging me to consider the uncharted paths that life sometimes lays before us. It is a reminder that even in moments of quiet vulnerability, there is a profound strength waiting to be awakened. In the days that followed our late-night conversation, the air between Sam and me seemed to shimmer with an unspoken promise. Life carried on around us, with its daily routines and predictable rhythms, yet beneath the surface, every moment crackled with a new intensity. I found myself watching for his familiar glance, waiting for the subtle signals that told me he was near, even if his presence was often as quiet as a whispered secret. At first, our interactions remained gentle. In the mornings, I would catch him reading in his favorite chair by the window, his eyes lingering on the pages of a newspaper or a book that seemed to hold a world of memories. During family meals, his polite smiles and soft nods hinted at the depth of what lay unspoken between us. I was learning to navigate the fine line between everyday conversation and the intimate connection that had taken root in the quiet corners of our shared moments. One afternoon, as I was tidying up after a family lunch, I caught a glimpse of Sam in the hallway. He paused just outside the kitchen door, his expression thoughtful, as if he were weighing a decision. My heart pounded in anticipation. This was the moment when he might bridge the gap between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Before I could summon the courage to speak, he stepped forward. "Hey," he said softly, his tone casual yet inviting. "Do you have a minute to talk?" I nodded, setting aside the dish I was drying, and followed him into the living room, a space that, until now, had always felt like neutral territory. With the low hum of the afternoon serving as a backdrop, we settled onto a comfortable sofa, positioned in a way that invited a quiet dialogue. For a few moments, we simply sat in silence. The pause was not awkward. Instead, it felt charged with meaning. I could sense that this conversation was not about the mundane details of our daily lives. It was about something deeper, something both of us were slowly acknowledging. "I've been thinking," Sam began, his voice measured and sincere, "about everything we talked about that night. About the possibility of opening ourselves up to something new, even if it scares us." His eyes, steady and clear, met mine, and I felt an undeniable pull, a magnetism that made it hard to look away. I hesitated, gathering my thoughts. "I feel it too," I admitted quietly. "But sometimes it's hard to know if we're ready to face the changes it might bring." The words felt both liberating and vulnerable, as if I were revealing parts of myself that had long been hidden. He reached out, his hand hovering just above mine for a moment before gently resting on it. The simple gesture carried a promise of understanding. "Change is never easy," he said, "but sometimes the right changes lead us to the parts of ourselves we never knew existed." His fingers lightly brushed the back of my hand, a touch that was neither forceful nor fleeting, but deliberate and reassuring. In that moment, the weight of our unspoken connection seemed to lift. I realized that our relationship was evolving slowly, like a delicate flower unfolding in the warmth of a new dawn. The tension that had once felt like a silent challenge was now transforming into a shared commitment to explore the unknown together. As our conversation continued, The topics shifted seamlessly from the bittersweet memories of the past to the hopes and fears of the future. Sam spoke of a time when he too, had hesitated at the brink of change, afraid of the consequences yet compelled by an inner desire for something more. His honesty resonated deeply with me, and I found myself opening up about my own dreams and uncertainties. We shared moments of quiet laughter over memories of family gatherings and thoughtful silences that spoke louder than words. Later that week, I discovered that our growing connection was affecting even the simplest aspects of daily life. On one particularly quiet evening, I returned home to find Sam waiting in the living room, seated at a small table with a modest spread of snacks and a couple of cups of tea. The gesture was unexpectedly warm, a silent invitation to share a moment of calm amid the complexities that had begun to shape our days. "Join me," he asked, a soft smile playing at the corners of his lips. I accepted, feeling a surge of gratitude. Over tea, our conversation meandered from the mundane to the profound. We discussed literature, music, and even our favorite childhood memories, details that painted a fuller picture of who we were beyond our immediate roles in the family. In these moments, I felt as though the boundaries between us were gently dissolving, replaced by a growing sense of trust and mutual respect. Yet, amid the budding warmth, there lingered an undercurrent of caution. I was aware that our evolving bond carried risks not only to our own hearts but also to the delicate balance of family dynamics. We never spoke of it explicitly, but there was a shared understanding that we were treading on uncertain ground. Still, the unspoken allure of our connection made every conversation, every shared glance, feel precious and fragile. One late evening, after the household had quieted down and the soft glow of night had settled over the home, Sam and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen once again. The atmosphere was different now, more relaxed, yet imbued with a heightened sense of possibility. We were washing dishes side by side, our movements synchronized in a way that felt natural, as if we had known each other far longer than the days since our initial encounter. "Do you ever wonder," Sam mused, breaking the comfortable silence, "if our lives are meant to be a series of carefully orchestrated moments, each one leading us closer to who we are meant to become?" I paused, a dish in hand, contemplating his question. "Sometimes," I replied slowly. "I think that every choice, even the small ones, builds a path toward something greater. But it's hard to know which path is the right one." He smiled, a gentle, bittersweet expression that conveyed both understanding and a quiet determination. "Perhaps it isn't about choosing the perfect path," he suggested. "Maybe it's about embracing the journey, even when we can't see the end." The words resonated deeply within me, stirring feelings that I had been too cautious to fully acknowledge. The idea of surrendering to the flow of change, of letting life lead me, even into the uncertain, felt both liberating and a little terrifying. In the soft light of the kitchen, with the rhythmic sound of running water in the background, I realized that I was beginning to trust not only Sam, but also the unseen currents that were drawing us together. By the time we finished our work, the night had deepened, and a serene silence had settled over the house. Sam lingered near the doorway as I walked back to my room. There was no rush, no need for a dramatic goodbye, only the quiet assurance that tomorrow, and the days beyond, might bring more opportunities to explore this delicate connection. As I lay in bed later that night, I replayed every moment in my mind, the softness of his touch, the sincerity in his eyes, and the gentle cadence of his voice as he spoke about life's unpredictable beauty. I felt a cautious hope rising within me, a hope that perhaps, by stepping into the unknown, I could discover a part of myself that had long been waiting to be awakened. The tension that had once been a barrier was now transforming into a bridge, carrying us forward into a realm of uncharted emotions and unspoken possibilities. I understood that the journey ahead would not be easy and that it might challenge the very core of what I believed in. But in the quiet of the night, as the gentle hum of the world outside lulled me toward sleep, I welcomed the thought of embracing that challenge. In this third part of our unfolding tale, the connection between us deepens. The subtle challenges and shared vulnerabilities are met with a cautious determination to explore the future, an exploration that promises growth, self-discovery, and perhaps a love that transcends the ordinary. The journey continues, each moment a stepping stone into a world where every choice holds the power to redefine us. In the following days, the quiet intensity between Sam and me reached its climax. Our stolen moments, whispered conversations in hushed corridors, gentle touches exchanged in the soft glow of twilight, had led us to an unspoken crossroads. We knew the risks, the delicate balance of family ties and the uncertainty of a bond that defied convention. Yet, in our shared glances and tentative smiles, we found the strength to embrace what was inevitable. One evening, under a sky dusted with stars, Sam and I met in the quiet garden. His eyes, filled with a resolute tenderness, met mine as we acknowledged the truth of our hearts. "We must face the consequences of our choices," he whispered, his voice steady yet tender. I nodded, realizing that the spark between us had transformed into a quiet fire, one that demanded honesty and courage. In that moment, we chose to step forward together, accepting that our journey would forever change the fabric of our lives. We agreed to cherish our connection in the privacy of our shared understanding, guarding it like a secret promise against the world's uncertainties. As we parted that night, our farewell was filled not with regret but with hope, a hope that every moment of vulnerability would lead to a deeper understanding of ourselves. In the silent aftermath, I learned that true connection comes at a cost, but it also offers the gift of transformation. Our lives, forever intertwined by a fateful encounter, now carried the promise of new beginnings, where every step into the unknown was a step toward a more authentic life.